Yeah, this is the meeting of the Senate Agricultural Committee, and it's our second day. Yesterday we met for a while, and so we're really just getting started on the 21-year Ag Committee work, and we have appointed a clerk who's Corey Parent, Senator Parent from Franklin County, and Chris Pearson, Senator Pearson from Chittenden County is the vice chair. And we also have returning Senator Collmore from Rutland County and Senator Polina from Washington County. We do have Kelly McGill with us, filling in for Michael O'Grady, who is off for some personal reasons. And Linda Lehman will also be our committee assistant this year, as she has in the past. So welcome everybody, and we'll get started. We wanted to talk this morning a little in regards to our priorities, but we have Kelly with us to go over a bill that Michael was putting together for us. And I think, Kelly, you've been helping in regards to that. And before you get started, I don't know, do any of the committee members have anything they'd like to comment on before we get started in regards to hearing from Kelly? If not, Kelly, are we going to be able to pull that up on our screen?
Yes, I'm happy to share that screen with you.
Yeah, well, why don't we get started then?
Okay, great. Would you like me to do a quick introduction or just jump right in?
No, you can do an introduction.
Okay, great. So just very quickly, as Senator Starr just mentioned, I am the law clerk this year for Michael O'Grady, Ellen Tchaikovsky, and Maria Royal. So I'll be focusing on agriculture, environmental, land use, and telecommunications issues. I specialized in agricultural law, food law, and environmental law when I was in law school, and graduated from Harvard Law School this past May. So I'm happy to be helping today, as well as throughout the session, however the committee would like, and in conjunction with Michael once he returns. So I'll go ahead and share my screen now, if that's all right with the chair.
Yep.
Okay.
Linda, you know, might be able to help pull that stuff up for you too, Kelly, as we move forward.
Yep, Linda was actually very helpful in doing a test run with me. So are you able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. And is that zoomed in enough, or would you like me to zoom in more?
More.
More?
You could be a little larger. Yeah.
I can keep going. Is that?
That's good.
Okay, great. So this is a bill that your committee, and just for the record, Kelly McGill here to go over the use of food residuals for farming draft committee bill. And this is a bill that your committee worked on pretty extensively during the last session. So at the committee's request, this is a rerun of what was last year S-265, an act relating to the use of food residuals for farming. So the language has not deviated from that language of S-265 as reported out of committee last session, other than to make some small technical changes, increasing the the date for the reporting deadline by a year, and a number of other small technical changes. So just to give a little bit of background, although I'm sure most of the returning members of the committee are familiar, this bill would clarify that the importation of food residuals onto a farm is farming, provided that no more than 2,000 cubic yards of food residual per year are imported, and that the compost is principally used on the farm, or that the farm is a small farm that is raising or managing poultry. So in order to accomplish those goals, the draft committee bill adds the importation of food residuals up to 2,000 cubic yards to the definition of farming under Act 250. And that is the principal definition that's used in statute for farming, including under the required agricultural practices. It also amends the required agricultural practices rule directly to create the same definition for farming and to clarify that this would be farming. It further creates an agricultural residuals management program in Section 3 and requires the adoption by the Agency of Agriculture.
Kelly, can you scroll that up as you go through, or?
Sure, absolutely. I was just giving a high-level overview first, but I can certainly scroll through as I'm speaking. Do you want me to start back at Section 1 or just skip to where I was at?
Well, were you gonna back up anyhow?
I was going to, but it's obviously however you'd like me to proceed.
No, that's okay. Continue as you were, because you must have had a plan.
Well, I'm happy to change that plan as the committee would like.
I think what you were doing was good. Give the overview first and then go through it section by section.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So Section 3, as I was saying, creates a program for agricultural residuals management for the farming activities that were defined in Section 1, and also requires that the Agency of Agriculture adopt rules for managing those residual wastes, such as food residuals that were generated, imported, and managed. Section 4 through 6 makes amendments to the Agency of Natural Resources Solid Waste Management Authority, basically to conform with the provision under Section 1 that puts the management of these food residuals up to that 2,000 cubic yard limit within the Agency of Agriculture's authority. Section 7 is regarding an interim application of the solid waste management rule. That just means before the Agency of Agriculture's rules are adopted and go into effect, ANR's accepted composting practices would apply to farms producing compost. And then Section 8 requires that the Secretary of Agriculture and Secretary of Natural Resources submit testimony to the General Assembly on or before January 15th, 2023, regarding the import of food residuals on the farm. And then Section 9 is just the effective date that states that the act will take effect on passage. So again, that's just a high-level overview of how the bill operates, and I'm happy to now go into more detail for each section. It is 12 pages long, so I wasn't planning on reading the whole thing unless the committee would like me to, in which case I'd be happy to. But if not, I can just provide a little bit more detail while scrolling through each section to show you how that operates.
Yeah, that would be fine, Kelly.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, Section 1 of the bill amends the Act 250 legislation, which is where the principal definition of farming that Title 6 and Title 10 draw upon for farming. So just to show you, that definition would be put under number 22 here. So it would add to the list of activities that qualify as farming. It would add a provision here in subdivision H that would, as I mentioned before, add to the list of farming activities importation of 2,000 cubic yards per year or less of food residuals or food processing residuals onto a farm for the production of compost, provided that the compost is principally used on the farm where it is produced, or the compost is produced on a small farm that raises or manages poultry.
Senator Collmore has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kelly, I'm just wondering, I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure I do. The word principally, does that mean the majority, like 51%?
We actually added a specific definition here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
In number 41 that defines what principally used means. And yes, you're correct. That is for the purpose of subdivision that more than 50%, either by volume or weight of the compost produced on the farm is physically and permanently incorporated into the native soils on the farm as a soil enhancement and is not removed or sold at any time thereafter.
Thank you.
So yes, you're correct. Greater than 50%.
Corey?
Yeah, this just might be because I'm the new guy on the committee, but is there a reason why we're choosing 2,000 cubic yards per year? What's the significance of that number?
So that would be a decision for the committee to make. That was the threshold that was determined in last year's deliberations on this text when it was appearing as S265, but that is of course a decision for you as the committee to determine.
Yeah, I believe, Corey, that was an issue, quite a major issue, and we had a lot of discussion in regards to that with people that are doing this as well as A&R, and I think that's how we got to the 2,000 yards. We kind of figured out how much that was a working day, say 5 days a week, and that's how we got to that number.
Okay.
Are there any other?
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Chair. For Senator Parent, my memory, the issue here is this practice now falls under A&R, and we're trying to say, you know, we need soil health, which compost builds. We need diversification on the farm, and we need places for food waste to go. And so we wanted to make this easy for farms to do kind of as an ancillary thing. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe Kelly could look into it and confirm the 2,000 number corresponds to the low threshold under A&R's current setup.
Yeah.
So while we're sort of taking this out of their jurisdiction, we're also kind of honoring what they consider to be their lowest threshold permit, or I can't remember the terminology, but it dovetails to their current structure as we're trying to, you know, sort of take it from them, but also respect that it's true that there is a role for them to play in any operation that is of a significant size.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can continue, Callie.
Right. And just to follow up on that quickly, that I don't know the exact threshold currently under A&R. I can get back to you on that. But that is generally in the range, including nearly the same amount as it's currently under the Act 250 exemption program for compost production. But I can get back to the committee on whether or not that's the current threshold under A&R. So to proceed, I just went over the definition here in subdivision H of what farming is, adding this compost production or use to that definition. It also adds under the same section 1 of the bill, number 38, which would be defining a farm for the purposes of subdivision 22H. It would also add a definition for food processing residuals, food residuals, and principally used as well as small farm. As I just went over for principally used. So these definitions have been drawn from current statute and definitions for food processing individuals have been drawn from the current required agricultural practices, and the definition of food residuals has been is the same as is used under the universal recycling law.
Kelly,
Yes,
Kelly, is this still, what we're talking about here is still amending Act 250, basically?
it
Or do
is. So this is just to show you where we're at. This is, sorry, it's so slow to.
It's okay.
Oh, so this is adding further definitions to 10 VSA 6001.
Which is Act 250.
Act 250. And
Okay.
the reason that it's there is because this is where the statutory definition for farming is drawn from. So in order to different subdivision H, individuals, food processing residuals, farm, small farm. It's defining each of those terms as used in the statute right there. Does that answer your question, Senator Kenya?
Yes, yes, thanks.
Kelly, I can't hear. I was having trouble hearing you. I don't know whether maybe Senator Starr could mute himself.
Yeah, I was having trouble near the end also.
Just to, are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Well,
Okay, great. Just to summarize what I was just saying, yes, it does add those definitions to 10 DSA 6001, which is the Act 250 definition section, and that's in order to provide definitions for the terms that are used in this new subdivision H that is being created. I'm happy to answer any questions on those definitions, or else I can go into describing what section 2.
Good. Any other questions on that section right now? No, I think you can continue, Kelly.
Great. So section 2 would directly amend the Agency of Agriculture required agricultural practices rule. It would amend the definition of farming to mirror that is used in section 1 that we just went over. It would also incorporate some of the definitions that were referenced in section 1. So it provides a definition here of food residual. It also provides a definition of principally used. It doesn't include all of the definitions that were provided in section 1 because some of those terms are already defined in the required agricultural practices. So that's section 2. I'm happy to answer any questions on that or to go more slowly.
See, I don't know where in committee, jump in here if you want. I don't know. Last year, the ag division, ag agency said, well, they didn't control this and, waste on farms. They didn't want to, because it included, they thought this was feed and they were calling it feed. ANR didn't want to deal with it because it was a nightmare for them. Have we put anything in here to require the Agency of Ag to consider this as in the farming section as farming and under their jurisdiction?
Yes, so that is partly accomplished in section 1 by adding this to the definition of farming. That definition is then referenced in a number of places in Title VI that defines.
So that's taken care of then, so.
Yep, and to answer a little bit more explicitly as well, further provisions, sections 4 through 6 of this draft would remove, explicitly remove composting up to this threshold amount as defined under farming from the authority of the Agency of Natural Resources. So it takes it from ANR's jurisdiction up to this threshold, 2,000 cubic yards, and places it with the Agency of Agriculture.
Yep, good, thank you.
You did mention commercial feed, and that is something that was addressed explicitly in prior drafts of the bill as it went through committee last year. This bill in its current form, as mirroring 265 as passed out of committee last year, does not directly address the issue of commercial feed. So I just wanted to flag that for your attention. So proceeding on to section 3, as I mentioned in my brief overview, this would create a program for managing residual waste that are generated under farming as we defined it in section 1. Some of those definitions are brought back in here for ease of reference, so that someone bringing up the statute is able to see quickly what agency, compost, farm, etc. references. And then you can see here in subdivision 4 that farming is explicitly drawing upon that definition from 6022. Likewise, there are also definitions here for food processing residuals and food residuals. So it then goes on to require that the Secretary of Agriculture regulates this importation. So here's the direct reference, Senator Starr, to the question that you were just asking. It further requires that the Secretary of Agriculture adopt rules to manage food residuals and food processing residuals and the waste that they may generate in the process of farming under this threshold definition. So it gives a list of the requirements. It starts here and continues on the next page under subdivision A here about the areas that the Secretary of Agriculture may adopt rules. And then it states that the Secretary may adopt the rules as part of the required agricultural practices or as independent rules. It also states again here that a farm producing under that definition in section 1, 6022, is regulated under Title VI and is regulated by the Secretary of Agriculture and Agency of Agriculture and is not required to get a certification from the Agency of Natural Resources. Section 4, sorry, if there are any questions on section 3 before I move on. Okay, I'll proceed on. Section 4 through 6, I can just go through pretty quickly because those 3 sections are essentially, as I mentioned before, just conforming amendments to the Agency of Natural Resources Authority in order to make it explicit that composting and the importation of food residuals up to this threshold amount is farming under the jurisdiction of the Agency of Agriculture and not under the Agency of Natural Resources. So as you can see, it's exempting that from the certification requirement. It's exempting that from the composting registration requirement under section 5 and under section 6, accepted composting practices. It is also removing this coordination between agencies and explicitly saying that the Secretary of Natural Resources shall not regulate a farm producing compost under subdivision 6022. Are there any questions on sections 4 through 6? I know I went over that rather quickly. Senator Starr, I think you're muted if you were responding.
Back on.
Okay, great. So if not, I'll move on to section 7.
Yep.
So section 7 would state that in the interim, before the Agency of Agriculture adopts rules as required under section 3, the solid waste management rules for the Agency of Natural Resources would apply to farms producing compost under the provisions of section 1. So that's just to provide an interim application of rules so that there's not a gap into which these farms producing compost would fall before these rules are adopted. And then section 8 is a reporting requirement that would require that the Secretary of Agriculture and Natural Resources submit testimony to this committee, as well as to the House Committee on Agriculture and Forestry regarding the import of food residuals on farms. And we have suggested updating the reporting year by 1 year out to reflect shifting the date that was in last year's S265, just to reflect the fact that this bill, if passed, would be passed a year later than S265 would have been. So that reporting requirement is currently January 15th, 2023. That's what's been suggested, but of course that would be for the committee to decide. And then section 9 just states that the act will take effect upon passage.
So are there questions from committee? Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Kelly, it would be helpful, and I don't expect that you would know this off the top of your head, but what we affectionately called Senator Polina's chicken bill last year was, I think, S265. This seems to have some provisions in it that go beyond what was in that bill. It did pass out of our body, but I think it got hung up on the other side. But it would be helpful to know what this bill does that the other bill did not do.
So this is rerun language from the draft of the committee bill that was reported out of your committee, S265. So this is the language, other than a couple very minor technical changes, as was passed last year. So it doesn't deviate from or go beyond what your committee considered last year. If that is
I think that the bill never passed the floor of the Senate though last year.
Right.
It never came to the floor.
Correct.
Well, it got caught up down the hall, I believe, in natural, didn't it?
Probably. It's a good guess.
Yeah, we were more focused on Act 250 and other things last year.
Yeah, and COVID. I mean,
And COVID, yeah.
and then before we resolved that, the agencies came together with a letter that took the pressure off, right?
Yeah, that said Agency of Natural Resources was gonna continue in the same vein they had been. And so, we're almost back starting from scratch again, other than we're at the base of where we put it together. We're ahead of that. But we've got to get, I think, natural resources in, A&R. We've got to get people from the ag in. And certainly we got to hear from Natural Resources Committee to see if, if they're going to whine and cry over it or because we don't want to get it down there and have it stuck either for months. And this really isn't as important as it was. Our COVID issues we're supposed to be working on anyways, but I talked with several of you folks over the fall and you thought we ought to get onto this and try to get it done. So that's why I had Michael redrafted up, and I guess Kelly has been helping Michael do some of this work. And so that's why we're where we are. I don't know if any of you have heard from the chicken farmers that do this and have been pushing you much to get it done, but, we did that field trip last year. We did spend a lot of time putting this together which I think was pretty good thought, and we were careful not to, overstep too far our bounds.
Bobby,
Yeah,
I have heard from I forget what they call themselves now, but there's a small group of poultry producers that are looking at this. I really heard from them through Rural Vermont, which is coordinating their efforts. And they said two things that I can recall. One, that they like the bill the way it is. They're glad that we're taking it up and that we're going to reintroduce it or try to move it forward in the current using the language from last time. They had one question, which I don't know if I can totally articulate, and it's sort of a question I'm going to direct to Kelly, who may or may not know the answer to it. But they talk about the fact that the Ag Agency is going to regulate these practices. And they wondered whether there was ever any thought about cost sharing for the regulation, the way there is under some other state and federal programs under the Better Pest Management Practices. There's cost sharing for things like conservation programs and certain composting operations. And they wondered whether there was ever a possibility of doing some cost sharing so that if somebody is being regulated and they have to come into compliance, there would be some shared costs. So that's a question that they had that I was honestly supposed to ask Michael about a little while ago, and I did not. So but other than that, they were pretty happy with the way things were going.
Now, are you talking about cost sharing if they had to install a concrete pad or bunker type thing to do their composting on, or
I believe so, yes. I think so, yes. I mean, we could ask Caroline from Rural Vermont is coming into the committee, I think, in the next day or so. And we could ask her to be more clear about what they're asking for, what they're wanting. They're not necessarily asking for anything. They want to get clear as to whether it's a possibility or not.
Yeah. Well, of course, it would be good if, like the one we went and visited up by the airport, he was in I thought in an old bunker silo type operation where he did his turning and mixing. What is that? Am I right on that, or
I didn't go, so I don't know.
no? But I would think there would be some interest in water quality if you were going to do composting, and you could do it on a concrete slab, and it was going to keep any runoff contained and stuff. I would think they would be. We need to check to see if water quality money could be used for cost sharing in a situation like that.
Yeah. All right. We can just think about it and check in with whoever would have the information.
Yeah. So, see, we have the guy up in Standard, I think, came in and testified. The guy up by the airport came in and testified or did it by phone. Are there any others that any of you want to try to track down, or do you think we could just have the organizations in and move forward?
Personally, I think we could have the organizations in and try to move forward that way. I mean, I don't think we need to hear from the farmers again. I'm not against that, obviously, if we think it's important, but I think that if we get the message that it's okay with them, I don't know if we need to necessarily bring them in again.
So we should have Linda try to send copies of Kelly's draft out to them and go from there.
Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. What about natural resources? Somebody from ANR, I wonder what their thinking is because don't we have a new guy, is it Peter, somebody over there that's looking after this now?
I don't know.
Well, Peter Walk is now the commissioner of DEC, I think. Is that what you mean, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Should we almost should talk with, I would think with Peter to, I think it'd be under his agency to, get his blessings or at least his review of the proposal and see where they are.
Yeah,
That
we
makes
can
sense.
very well bring it to the floor and say we didn't talk to them.
Yeah, so that we should plan sometime in the future to get them in, and as well as probably the ag agency to make sure that they've got ample labor and people that just to reassure people that that they can handle it without a lot of additional costs. So are there any other issues for Kelly now or? No?
Nope.
Nope.
And Kelly, are you going to be working with us right along until Michael gets back or?
I believe so, and I am Michael's law clerk, so I believe you will be seeing more of me throughout the session, if that's all right with you.
Well, I think it'd be great. And at least it brightens the room up with us five guys and Linda, So are there any other questions for Kelly at this time from any of the members? And I don't know, Linda, do we have anyone else in the room that's listening?
No, we don't.
No? Well, let's see. I think Kelly, we're all set unless you got something else you want to present to the committee.
No, at this point, no.
No? And have you heard anything from Michael in regards to when he might be back or any word from that?
I don't know, no.
No. Well, it was great meeting you and look forward to working along with you and glad you're on board.
Thanks very
Can I
much.
ask, can I ask a random question? Just because I don't know you, Kelly. I'm just curious why you chose at school to focus on agricultural law. I mean, do you come from a background that where that interest comes from?
I do. Thank you for the question. I actually grew up in the Northeast Kingdom in North Denville and then in Kirby. And when I grew up, my parents had a very small family farm. They raised sheep. And I had a very, very small egg business for a short time myself, as well as helped out with a dairy farm down the road. So farming is in my background, and my grandfather was state forester for the state of Vermont. So forestry is in my background as well. So these are issues in my blood, and it's an area of deep interest for me.
Great, thanks.
Well, that sounds interesting and good. So you grew up, you lived in Derby?
Kirby. So I grew up in North Danville, and my family moved to Kirby when I was in middle school.
Yeah, well, that's a nice little town tucked back up in the woods. Yeah, great place. So anything else? If not, thanks a lot, Kelly, for your time and being with us, and we look forward to working with you.
Absolutely, as do I. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, this morning committee, well, we had that meeting yesterday with the folks from Ag and in regards to their COVID expenditures and outlays. I don't know if you had any comments you wanted to bring up in regards to what we heard yesterday, or not. But we ought to kind of talk about that and our priorities and get them sort of in an order that we can deal with. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Senator Pearson for his comments at the end of the meeting. I thought that was very appropriate, and it was a great way to end the meeting, because I think sometimes we take for granted people that are working hard on behalf of all of our citizens. And I just appreciated that, Senator Pearson, quite a bit. We heard from, holy cow, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 people from the agency. So they all gave up a couple of hours to be with us. And I think their testimony did show that they did work hard through that COVID period that we're still experiencing. And they did their best to get the money out as quickly as they could to the right people. And I guess we're going to get a full report next month, which sounds like a long time away, but it's only a couple of weeks away. So it was good to reconnect with the agency, and I look forward to working with those folks down the road.
Yeah, and this morning, Carolyn and I both were on with them from 8 until right at 9, and we could talk. It was a private meeting, and we talked a lot about, well, why do we have some money left over, and what could we do to prevent that? And the agency came back with the fact that a lot of farmers don't keep very good records, or the records are not accurately kept. And it was very clear in our COVID funding that they had to show losses to be able to qualify. And in several or many cases, I guess they used the term many, they didn't have good enough records to be able to show that they had losses, and that they thought that, somehow we need to beef up like farm viability, so that when they do ask for farm viability to help them out, that they get into some type of a regular bookkeeping system, set up a payroll account where even if it's just the one farmer family, that at least they have a payroll account that shows that they weren't able to meet even their payroll for themselves, and that would have qualified more of these small farms to receive more help. And so that was interesting to hear that, this day and age, you'd think everybody would have, with the extension service and banks and loan officers and all of that there would be regular bookkeeping done by the folks. But so that was one issue. They thought that the programs worked very well. They said if we had it to do over, they probably would have put the caps higher. But we didn't know back when we did all this where the heck people were and what they needed for money and how much they were losing. But in general, they thought things went very, very well.
So I just wanted to jump in here if I could, Bobby, and I think we need to sort of shoulder some of the, I don't want to say blame, but some of the inefficiency here. We, as a legislative group, had never tried to do this before either. And we
No.
made some, some assumptions that maybe weren't true. The cap was one of them, I think, and the I don't know how to say it, but we assume all the time that everybody, and trust me, I'm not a very proficient internet type person, but we tend to assume that everybody is at least as proficient as we might ourselves be, if not better. And that may not always be true. And as you correctly point out, there may be a very small farm somewhere that doesn't have either internet capability in terms of receiving it or any interest in it. They're just there to do their job, and it's hard for them to always fit in. So again, I think was it 21 million? I think that we had decided would go to dairy at some point, and I think the answer that was given yesterday was that 18 million of it was appropriated. Leaving 3, which is unfortunate because it did go back to joint fiscal. But I think part of that is our responsibility too, and it wasn't certainly anything that the Agency of Agriculture didn't do. I mean, I think they tried their best to absolutely help as many people as they could. So
I'm sorry, but could you remind me which caps we're talking about? Are we talking about cap per farm?
Yeah, we set those caps on there so that the big guys or the larger people, larger farmers wouldn't use up all the money, and
Right.
So it cut them off, I think, at 100 grand. But when we first started talking about this, $100,000 was a lot of money, and I think we underestimated how much loss they actually had, and you couldn't count the same losses twice. So quite a few of those folks got other federal money from FSA and the federal organizations. So we thought, we felt that was enough, but all in all, I think it went very good, and I had several farmers call and thank me and the committee for the job that we did, and I don't think I had one call up and complain that they didn't get enough to make any difference. So and I think you folks have probably found this out. You don't usually get too many thank yous in this business that we're in. We hear people's needs and wants, and we work our butts off trying to get that done, but we don't always make it. But we don't get too many people calling us and thanking us for what a great job we did. But I did get a few, and it was a reflection on the whole committee, because we work as a team, and I think we did pretty darn good. Any other comments on that yesterday's meeting that anybody wants to bring up?
Well, just chasing on that last point, I'm a little unclear if some of the money for dairy did not go out because they were getting other federal money. I mean, this was something that was impossible for us to really understand as we were trying to set it out, but we basically said you can't double dip, right? That was
Yeah.
across the board in all of, as I understand it, all of our relief efforts as the state. And so I guess I've assumed that farms were able to take, in many cases, more generous offers from other direct federal programs. And I'd love to really understand that. And that was the nature of my question. I think we have to wait a few weeks still, but I do think, for me, I'm curious, and I think we have to totally understand this picture because we may well see other federal monies that we may want to replicate what we've done.
Yeah. Well, I think all the farms, whether small or large, took part in the PPP program for the bigger ones, and the UPA program for the smaller ones. So what I think what we got for losses was directly on the milk pricing, because their employment they picked up from PPP, which was, some of them big farms with 20 to 50 employees, that added up to some serious money. And so they got help there that they couldn't count toward our program because you can't double dip. But I think our program that we set up basically covered the milk payment losses that they got. And I don't know, did you get the reports on money paid out from time to time? The dairy, I don't know if you picked up on it, but dairy processors, there was one big one that got quite a lot of money. And I thought maybe that was Cabot Cheese or Ben and Jerry's, but it was DFA on their plant in St. Albans that does powdered milk. So, that was a backdoor way of course, helping dairy farmers, because if DFA hadn't have gotten that money and they'd lost that money or that amount of money, it would come out of the farmers' pockets, basically. So, there was, and they may have even got onto the PPP program. I don't know, but there was hundreds of millions of dollars that Vermonters in general got through that Triple P program. Corey?
Yeah, one topic that came up yesterday, and I don't know if anyone else picked up on it, but I've seen the trend up here over the past year is some of our local producers bottling their own milk. I know of a couple operations in Franklin County that are pasteurizing and doing their own thing. I drive by one every day on my way to work. It's called the Dairy Stop, and you can stop in and get local milk. So I'd like to drill into a little more of that this year and see what we can do to support, businesses going in that direction as well.
Anthony?
Actually, Corey, I was going to say the same thing, that really struck me, that they talked about a couple of farmers who had moved towards bottling their milk. And if that was a way of using the CARES money to allow them to regain income by bottling their own milk, that is definitely something that we should look into more. Is there a way to even bring together a group that would cooperate towards doing something like that? I think that really struck me when they said that.
And see, of course, without doing this like 2 years ago, they couldn't show any losses. But you might be able to transfer CARES money to cover a general fund expenditure, and then try to use that general fund expenditure to help these businesses that want to start bottling, something along those lines.
you can make the argument, as we've tried to make over time, that you can help a large number of farmers by allowing them to bottle their own milk and sell it as a Vermont, a Vermont milk product.
Yeah, I think Corey mentioned yesterday that these bottlers bottle milk that's above their limit that they can send to the co-op or something. Did you talk about that, Corey?
I would know that was just in a conversation you had. I think that because some of them are still co-op members, and I don't know how they're working around that, but at some point you should have the conversation with them about that, because we know DFA cut their piece to 85% production, and so I think learning more. Again, they just honestly started popping up this summer and spring, summer and fall, and just with COVID year, we didn't get out to talk to them like we normally would have in a campaign year. So I just think it's interesting to, one, highlight it to let people know what's going on, and two, learn how we can support it.
Yeah. I think the one issue that we've got to kind of zero in on and try to come up with some type of a plan is the food security issue. And I think, leadership has stressed this to me and, in the interim here. And I did ask Anson about that earlier today, and it seems that, we heard in the news that some of our, farm food boxes or boxes of food were coming from out of state. That was in the news back, this fall. And people got in an uproar over, here we are producing food, but yet the feds are going off and getting this stuff from out of state. He said that the Abbey Group, those guys in Washington have gotten that straightened around, and the Abbey Group has gotten this last contract to do this farm food to people movement thing. So have you heard anything from them, Corey, up there in St. Albans, Enosburg?
Not since they were told they weren't getting the contract, and we were trying to work with the folks in Washington to help them get it back. So
you heard about it. It's getting back to my old story again. You don't get many thank yous. You heard about when it was a problem, but you didn't hear back that they'd gotten the contract.
No.
Oh yeah, that's very typical. But so the Abbey Group is going to be handling this into the future. So that's a good outlet for our local producers to be able to participate in that. It's called Food Box, that program in regards. So anyways, that's that part of it. On the food security, it came up, I brought it up again this morning with Anson, about what are we going to do to be able to, if we want these contracts and we want to make sure that our folks have ample food, what are we going to do about processing and storage so that we had, fresh veggies all winter and some fruit, and meat. And Allison Eastman, the deputy, spoke up, and she said that the Apple Co-op in Shoreham, Vermont, which is right on 22A down there on the right, they have a cooler system, a freezer system, and 3 different rooms where you could do processing and packaging. and a wicked warehouse space. So, and the guy that, I think the guy that used to come to our committee in regards to hemp, Nikita or Nikki or,
Nikita White,
yeah,
Nataka White.
Nataka, that he has something to do with that property. And see, I mean, the guy from the people we talked with last year, now I got my phone ringing. The people we talked with last year, from where the hell were they from? But they said there was a problem with from over in your district, Anthony, over in the valley. Remember that we talked to them at the food from the food hub, and
Yeah,
they said that we needed to address that issue.
yeah, I vaguely remember, yes.
And then there was a guy down in Rutland. We went and visited that place, Brian, the food hub down there, and they were going to convert those shed in the back to refrigeration and
Yeah.
stuff. Did they ever get their thing completed?
Yes, they did. I think it's the local, forgive me because I'll probably pick the wrong nonprofit. I think it's the Kiwanis Club, but I could be wrong. Donated money, and they have an outside greenhouse off to the back of it that they can store a whole bunch, grow and then store stuff year round. So yeah, that's turned into a very, very good thing here in Rutland County.
Yeah. So where should we start with our food security issues? You know, we need to get the food bank in, maybe these people
John Sales, yeah.
that handle it and distribute it, to see how that went and how we can improve upon that.
Yep.
So we could get the guy from the food bank. I don't know, they've worked with a group of people on distribution. There's the outfit up in Hardwick that they ended up, I guess, buying 2 or 3 of their own vehicles to distribute food.
What about the folks that did this sort of local produce restaurants meal prep? Can we talk to them? I think that was such a great sort of triple hit for us.
Yeah. I forget what that's called.
What's that called?
Yeah, I forget what it's called.
Not farm to table, was it?
No, it might be Vermonters Feeding Vermonters.
Yeah, or Vermonters Eats or something.
Is that restaurant down, there's a restaurant down your way, Anthony, that we even get the menus each week, I think, on our emails about the following week, what they're gonna be, where you can put your order in and
Yeah, we have a couple of those though.
um,
I think we should also ask Hunger Free Vermont what they think would be the
Yeah.
ideal strategies that we should use. I mean, they do a lot with the federal programs and that kind of stuff, which I think is good, but I think we have to focus more on what we can do here, with local stuff. But Hunger Free Vermont might have some ideas as to where we could put our focus. We need somebody who can give us the overview to remind us of the things that we're forgetting, what they're called and whatnot. There's somebody out there who knows the answer to all these questions, and we can start with that person, whoever it is.
And well, I can have Linda try to dig dig those names up of different, well, Hunger Free Vermont, of course, we know those folks and have worked with them a lot. So I can have Linda kind of fool with that and get that set up and get those people coming in to give us an overview of how their program went that they did have set up, and it would, you guys jump in here if I get messed up, but if we did that on like a Wednesday where we have the full morning, it would probably consume a whole morning to get that. And
Yep.
whereas like on a Tuesday, we don't only get maybe a couple of hours at the best. So probably maybe next Wednesday when we do the schedule, we could try to get these people lined up and give them a lead time. But Wednesday or Thursday of next week.
Sounds good.
Would that
So,
work?
Yeah, it sounds good.
yeah, I would suggest John Sales, who is the Vermont Food Bank head. And I think it would be good to have a guy named Tom Donahue, who represents BROC down here, which stands for the Bennington Rutland Opportunity Council. They do a lot of food giveaways, and Tom can certainly talk about the southern part of the state pretty well.
Yeah. And then have somebody from Hunger Free Vermont in.
Yep.
And what about the lady from education that does all the school meals things?
Yeah.
Rosie?
Rosie.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree, because a lot of food is going out that way. I think it would be helpful for us to understand what's up there, and if there are deadlines that they're worried about or whatever.
There was somebody from corrections too that we talked to.
corrections.
Yeah.
And what about like the place in Hardwick that distributes a lot of this food with their circles?
I don't know if you're
I-
thinking of the Center for an Ag Economy. I don't know if that's what you're thinking about. The Center
Yeah.
for an Agricultural Economy. They would know what's going on up in the Kingdom and Hardwick area anyway. Even if it wasn't them actually doing it, they would know who's doing what.
Yeah. Well, that's going to give us a pretty good morning, I think, full of people. And what about up your way, Corey? The Abbey, whoever runs their program up there, as long as they got their contract back, would that be worth hearing from them and how that is going and how it, how it's working, what the holes are in it?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
Sorry if I missed this, but what contract you keep referencing? What contract is that?
It's the food box program. It's where they box up fruits, veggies, I guess milk, and they have distribution areas and you drive to get it.
Okay, that's different from what the Guard was doing, though. Is that right? Or are they together, those issues?
Damned if I know. Anson just mentioned that this morning that they had gotten the contract back, and so it sounded to me from Anson as they had the contract, but then somehow they lost the contract, went out of state, and now they've gotten it.
Yeah, it went to a Massachusetts company that I think it's supposed to be, I think, based on local food. And I think they did a Northeast region and said the Massachusetts company qualified. And
Right.
then I think Senator Leahy helped kind of twist some arms that local actually means Vermont.
Yeah. Anything else in regards to food security stuff? I mean, we aren't going to solve this in 1 or 2 meetings. It's, it's a very big and very important issue, and
The only thing I would ask is for us to get an update from what they've been doing, but also to find out right up front, what do they need or what could they use in the months ahead? It's important for us to understand the experience, but we're in the middle of it, right? So there's still a bunch of field in front of us, and I wouldn't want to have them say, "Oh, well, we'll come back after we've figured it out." Hopefully, we can be efficient about it. Obviously, it's not something we're going to do next week entirely, but to me, that's an important piece of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're looking to come up with sort of an overview, like of a plan, like what are the pieces that we need in order to meet the food needs of Vermonters. So it's one thing to say what they've already done, that's fine. But what we really want to know is, like you're saying, Chris, is we need to know like what we need to be doing next in order to fill the gaps.
So are there other issues in regards to COVID that any of you want to get on our list to drill down on and try to figure out how to make it work better, or right now, or you want to kind of take it a couple at a time, issues, and get that done and then move on?
Well, before too long, I'd love us to see if we can't keep expanding the local food. Everybody's talked about, it's been a banner year for CSAs and for on-farm farm stands, all of those little pieces that collectively make for a stronger rural economy. So before long, I hope we can also focus on that and find out again, are there gaps we could fill or programs we need to extend, et cetera, to make those successful. Gus, we're going to hear from Gus. Maybe a lot of it is their technical support, but just, let's capitalize to the extent that there have been some real positives here for our farming economy. I'm hoping we can amplify that.
Yeah, and I mean, we should find out too about, how the farmer markets played out. I know they mentioned yesterday that they were smaller, less vendors there, but the ones that were there did very well. And so that's good. I was trying to think if there was something else along the food line.
There is one thing, Bobby, and we got a copy of this a few weeks ago. It was S273 last year. I think Chris and Ruth Hardy kind of worked together on the school food situation. Of course, she's now in education, so I'm sure if we don't do something with it, she probably will, but that might be something to take a look at again. I'm trying to remember, did that ever get to the floor or no? Okay.
It didn't make it. I don't know what went wrong, but I think it was the cost of the program that kind of held it up. That was the school meals program where we would do more universal meals, and it's a hell of a program. Everybody eats, and there's no money involved, so there's no slippage there, and the schools get grants from the feds and from AOE, and in the balance, if you of money goes right to the general fund of the school district. And of course, they get their money from, Montpelier and so in the same people that pay their own children's lunch costs, probably, I know in my town, because I checked it out when I was on the board, but they're the same people that pay all the taxes anyways. So it's all we were doing is you collect the taxes from them and then you nickel dime them at the hot lunch program when their kids go to school. And whereas if you dump it all in on the tax bill, then everybody pays pennies toward it and everybody eats and it's really that universal meals is the best way to go. Chris?
Did you submit that bill again, or I'd seen some emails. I thought we were gonna do it again.
Yeah, we got Michael drafting it up.
Well, and that was Jim Demares too, because
Right. Yeah.
All right, yeah. Senator Hardy's on healthcare and not on education anymore. She's in finance with me in the afternoon. But what I understand, and it's worth looking into, and Corey, the short story here was we said, over time, if you buy 25% of your food locally, we'll give you 25 cents a meal. Yep. Based on some incentive programs that have been working well in New York and maybe Michigan, some other places. I'd love to get an update. They're pretty new in those other states. And as I understand it, even during the pandemic, New York has done quite well by their program. So it'd be worth us, I think we should start with some of the other issues, but I'm hopeful we'll dig into this one, because in terms of the long-term sustainability of our diversified ag, I think this is about the best shot we've got, and pretty small investment that quickly reverberates back through the community.
Yeah, no, I remember talking to Ruth about it last year. One I'm interested along those lines too is, and I know it's a federal issue, but maybe we'll have a little more leeway, but I'd really like to see whole milk get back into the school systems, go back. Just for example, I mean, my kid's, his daycare gets fed through a school program, and my kid's 2.5 years old and 26 pounds. He's tiny. So the doctor still has us, have him drink whole milk, but he doesn't get it at his childcare facility because of the school piece. So, I think we still need to understand that it's healthy for kids to get whole milk in the school system. And even if we've got to send, even if it's just a letter to our delegation in DC, I'd like to see us support trying to get whole milk back in schools.
Well, or what happens in Vermont if we require an option for whole milk,
right?
And what that might cost us, So, Christ, we haven't got any milk bottlers left. I mean, we lost one this year, Thomas, and so now we're down to Monument Farms, I guess, and basically Booth Brothers.
Well, if you've got these local producers producing milk and can produce them for their local school, it plays.
Yeah, they could, put it in bags and have a cooler with a hand rig dispenser, and I don't know who would get in to give us an overview of how that's gone in like New York State. I don't know if AOE would.
I think it's a Vermont feed that Betsy Rosenbluth and there's that whole conglomeration that helps the schools with the technical piece of shifting to farm to school. I think they themselves are a resource and could connect us to some of the folks engaged in New York. We never got what was a satisfyingly clear picture to me last year, but this is a year later, so presumably the New York program, they have to monitor it. There's all these benchmarks and stuff that they have to adhere to. So assuming it's a little more mature, maybe they could send us somebody.
Anything else in this area that any of you want to pull in to bring up? I mean, I'm probably will get a dozen other issues once we drill into this that we'll need to flush out and talk about. But I think this is a big issue that Becca would like to have us work on. And it's just a good issue for our people to work on this anyhow. So it, it's a good, I think we're lucky that we're in ag where we can work on something that's interesting. It's good for our local economies, and it's good for our children, and good for the people that we represent. So I don't see any rough sledding here. It's just if we can come up with the money to make it all happen. So I think we've got a plate that's pretty full on this one subject area. Caroline Gordon is coming in tomorrow to chat with us in regards to rural Vermont, and they want to do some, I don't know, some breakout committees or something, and was wondering if we could take part in them, like at lunchtime. And I said, well, I'll tell you, Caroline, I don't know about the other members, but we don't very often even get a lunchtime. There's always something planned and scheduled, and so I don't know how that's going to work, but come on in and we'll chat about it and try to get it set up so that so that we can take part sometime, or you can change your program a little bit and we'll figure it out that way. The other thing, we've got Gus coming in too, and Jackie Folsom will be in to talk about the fairs and Farm Bureau, and I don't know. I did get several, maybe 4 thank yous from different fair groups on how much. Remember, we got 500,000 in CARES money for our local fairs. I think it was 4 thank yous from that crew in regards to how much that really helped their fair survive the summer without having a fair. So they were very appreciative, and so that went good. So tomorrow, I guess we've got business there. Are there other issues that any of you have that we can take up, as we get holes in the schedule? We're supposed to get that. I don't know if I talked with you about that report back from PSHAC's crew on the milk study. That should be getting back to us next week, I would presume. So if we're already booked up for next week, we'll plan on it for the week after. But that's not related to COVID directly, but indirectly it is. So do any of you, Chris?
Well, this is also indirectly related to COVID, and this is something I talked to you a few months ago, Mr. Chair, but this is the right to repair issue where
Yeah,
farmers are not really allowed to access parts for their tractors, or they have to go to the dealer. During the pandemic, that didn't get any easier. So this has been a discussion that's actually reverberating around the world, and the basic idea is just like you don't have to take your car to the car dealer. You can go to your local mechanic. And that there is a push on this. Farm bureaus across the country have supported this. So I'm working on a bill that's just related to ag equipment. It's not quite ready yet, but I'm hopeful, at some point this month we could take some hearings on it and try to understand and see. We've talked about this a little bit in a more broad context of handheld electronics and stuff. And boy, the stories come out of the woodwork. And I have a feeling it would be kind of interesting and similar for this. I'd love to begin the discussion, see if we can do it. So that bill's almost ready. I hope to get it in the next week or so. And I'd be grateful. I assume it comes to us. And I'd be grateful if we could take a little time with it.
Have you
Yeah.
talked to the Vermont Farm Bureau about it, Chris?
I haven't as recently as I should have. I did last year. It's on their radar. And nationally, I think the Farm Bureau, I know in Nebraska, a few state farm bureaus had taken this supportive position.
Okay.
I
So,
know.
yeah, I haven't done the legwork that I should have, Senator Collmore, yet.
I know that, it's hard. They won't let you have the programs to be able to repair your own. And some of our large farms, if you've got half a dozen boys that grew up on the farm, the whole half dozen don't care about milking cows. There's always one or two that want to do something different. And the big job, besides the dairy animals, is keeping that machinery all up and running and serviced and fixed. And I know they have trouble getting the programs to put in their computer so they can repair their farm equipment and keep. It's all very technical stuff that they buy now. Remember them telling us about the damn manure spreader that GPS reads the results of the ground test, and you'll be going with your manure spreader and it puts so many pounds onto the acre here, and as you're going down through the field, it switches it automatically to less amounts where there's less needed in fertilizer. And I mean, there's a lot to that other than just pulling the gate up like we used to and taking off with the tractor. So no, I think that'll be an interesting bill to look at and deal with, Chris. Yeah. Other issues that any of you picked up that we should be keeping an eye on, or?
One thing which we've already touched on a little bit, but was that I found interesting the other day was that the lack of ability to train people for meat processing, and Vermont Tech doesn't even have a facility to train people for meat processing. I'm not sure exactly what we do about that, but I think it's something that we need to keep in mind, because if we want more meat production, we all are familiar with the need to how the scheduling is going with the meats, the slaughtering and processing plants. But we need to improve the ability for people to get their food, their meat processed, and to not have a facility to train people is going to be a real problem.
That, I don't know why, but it seems weird that they always relied on private facilities to take their people to be actually trained. You'd think that they would have the equipment or some equipment there, the big equipment that you need quarter of beef with and in that to train them on site till it gets down to the, the more delicate area and then take them to a private.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, we can, eventually we'll get Pat in to see what kind of a deal they're running down there and what it would take to beef that up. Let's see, any other issues that you want to get on the schedule and so we'd have them to look at down the road.
Bobby, I assume there'll be, and it probably will start in the House, a miscellaneous ag bill coming out of the agency.
Yeah,
So-
they've got a miscellaneous bill, and one of them, there's no heavy lifting in any of their bills, but they want to clarify the language on who's a livestock dealer. They want to extend the time for hemp and the state-run program versus the federal program. We never extended that. The feds extended it, but we didn't extend it out. So they want to have us extend, that if the state had its own program, it could run a hemp program. They want to extend that date out. Back maybe 8 or 10 years ago, we set up a large vet program where we would help pick up some of their loan costs if they would come to the state and work on large animals. Do any of you remember that? Well, somehow they got large animals and food producing animals in it. I don't know where that food producing animals cropped up from somewhere other than in the legislature, as far as I'm concerned. And so they want to take, but it's not in the statute for some reason, the food producing. So they want to take the word horse. See, we had large animals, livestock, and horses in the bill. They want to take the word horse out and put food producing animals in, rabbits, chickens, Well, we don't need more small vet and small animal vets. We need to help get these big animals large. So I said, well, put it in and we'll have a discussion about it and hear from the Vets Association. Then they've got in their weights and measures about dealing with internal scales that aren't in the food chain, but I guess they've been going in and checking scales in the buildings and that aren't really used for the final use of weighing product out for sale. And they wanted to do something on that. Need to extend the date out for ecosystems, the ecosystems program that Ryan's running. And, that should be moved up to the top. But we'll do that, deal with that. And public records, they said that something about a lot of public records now come off databases, and they wanted to tighten that up so that if they pick up farmers' records off from databases, that they still remain non-public documents. So they're going to talk to us about that, and then they've gotten some complaints from slaughterhouses as well as grain stores that in their Act 250 permits that they received, they can't start work until say 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, and they have a nighttime cutoff time. And they've had some complaints about if of course, with fewer farmers, the grain trucks are going further with product to deliver. And so they want to be able to leave earlier in the morning, but yet their 250 permit says 7 o'clock, and so they can't leave at 6. And if they do leave at 6, the neighbors call in and report them. And then on the other end of the day, slaughterhouses, in some cases, or the one they quoted, they have to get done work at 6 o'clock in the afternoon or in the evening. If somebody comes in with an animal at 6:15 or 6:30, then the neighbors call in and complain that they're overrunning their prescribed hours and allowed hours. And so they want to make some changes to that somehow. And I think that's probably going to be the most sticky issue that they've got in their miscellaneous bill, but it's understandable. But I don't know how much support we'll get, dealing with those time issues. So that was about it. I think they talked about in their miscellaneous bill.
And that'll start in the other body?
Yeah, Carolyn said that she had plenty of time to get started on it.
Okay.
And I just soon take the last crack at that stuff anyways. It seems to work better. Any other, they've got money in their budget to get one additional meat inspector. They claim that that's an area that's really growing, and they think they could help get more product out the door if they had an additional inspector. And of course, now what's happened and what's caused that is this fall, I think we talked about it, was they got approval from the USDA that our inspection is good enough, so the USDA's accepted that for interstate shipment of meat products. So they picked up new customers out of state. So now they need to produce more to keep up. So that was a good thing. So I think that's about all we talked about, and I already brought it up about the Addison County down in Shoreham having that storage facility that could be utilized easily if when we get into food security and being able to store it. Is there anything else that anybody would any of you would like to bring up or get on the list. And, you know, we can change the list as we go along anyhow. You know, I'm sure we'll have cancellations and things that we can add. Brian?
Bobby, did we ever finally figure out the Addison County Field Days problem with the bathrooms?
I don't know, but we spent a lot of time on that freaking little bathroom down there.
We sure
Uh,
did.
I'm hoping
We,
we can spend a few more days.
Pardon?
I'm hoping we could spend a few more days on it.
Well, I want to know, is it done? Did we fix it?
Well, by God, I thought we did, but we'll
Okay.
check with Terry over on the house side. His
Yeah, Terry
wife
Miller.
his wife was looking at, she was like chairing that committee.
Okay. Yep.
And so we can check with Terry. I know we had this past year straightened out so they could run without it. And I thought they had come to an agreement, but let's double check that and make sure.
Jackie will probably know.
Yeah, she may know tomorrow. Make
That's-
sure
that's-
and
Yep.
jot that down and see if we can get an answer. Yeah, that was a long haul project for 2 little bathrooms.
For something that should have taken about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Any other stuff you wanna throw on? If,
This thing's kind of random, but I've been reading about the success of grass-fed dairy
yeah,
and good for the land, good for, particularly if we're trying to diversify more. So that's just something, I don't know what to do about it, but I just think it's something worth thinking about. Whether there's ways to encourage more grass-fed dairy production.
well, of course, I talked with Anson about that. You know, we lost 50 farms this year. And most of those farms that went out were small farms. And for the most part, they just sold their cattle. They kept their farmland.
Yeah.
And how it would be great if we had a beef system set up where we could have these farmers utilize this land for grass-fed beef.
Yeah.
And to be able to ship this meat to southern New England and maybe over even into New York State for people to buy. And grass-fed beef is healthy damn meat to be able to buy if you can get it. And it's not full of these hormones and all those good things that they pump into them out west to grow them huge and real quick.
So maybe it's some kind of effort towards transitioning, not, I don't want to say away from dairy, but when dairy farmers are going out, is a way to transition that land to local meat production, grass-fed meat production. It could be really good.
Well, plus it, like you said, Anthony, it's good for the soil because as these cows walk across the fields or the pastures, they poke little holes in there. So then when it rains like heck, instead of the water just running across the top, it drops in their footprints and
Yep.
so it really works good. And you have to go and clip those fields and pastures, but they really grow. They grow good grass, and we do have some of the best growing grass soils, or soils that grow grass in the country right here in Vermont with our climate.
I should think this is actually part of the ecosystem service discussion because,
Yeah,
as you say, Mr. Chair, this is one of the clear ways of building soil. So I hope we will talk about it throughout. It's a win-win-win and probably an important part of the next phase of Vermont agriculture.
yeah, and it would keep our fields, I don't know, you guys go to New Hampshire and upper state New York where there's no animals and these fields are growing up to old brown scrubby looking brush, and it would keep all that open and clean and green, and it was just better for everybody if we can
Keep the
pull
tourists
this
happy.
off. Yeah. Anything else that you wanna throw on? Is there anything going on in any of your other committees that would be of interest to us as senators?
Well, we're going to vote on the H-48 bill, which is a town meeting day bill, but not till tomorrow. We've got to get it referred to the committee today. We'll vote it out today, suspend rules tomorrow to vote it out and get it to the governor by Friday. And I'd be glad to explain it if people don't know, but I think everybody's, Jeanette, I know, didn't she make the presentation in front of the Democratic caucus? So you guys know what it's about.
Yeah, it's pretty much a voluntary type bill that doesn't demand anything, but it's there if you want to use it in your town. So
Correct. Yep.
I think we should be requiring vote by mail, but that's just me.
Yeah,
Well,
it does
Yeah.
require,
It doesn't require.
you like that voting by mail requirement, right?
I do.
Yeah,
I'd be
what
to make
you
it
do,
permanent
win
for all
by-
elections.
You win by a bigger amount this year?
No, but I think if the issue, COVID's worse today than it was when we passed the one in the fall, and we said it wasn't political then, and for us now not to do it, it just seems like it's political. So I don't think we should apply a double standard to it.
Oh, I didn't vote for it back then, so.
I mean, I didn't vote for taking the governor's authority away. I, didn't agree with that. I don't think it hurt. I think what you're going to have now is some towns are going to pass budgets. Like I work for a town. It's my understanding we don't plan on moving town hall. We plan on mailing, but some, it's just going to create this weird scenario of, what's happening and, all this. I think you just kind of got to stick to a day and move forward with it.
I actually have to agree. I mean, it's kind of weird for us to say this is voluntary, and then other factions, state government, are saying you cannot meet more than a dozen people or whatever. So there's nothing kind of voluntary about it, but we seem to be, I don't know. Anyway, that'll be a fun floor debate.
Yeah, I haven't figured,
Aaron Pearson amendment will go over well.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, uh-oh, we're in trouble when Parent and Pearson are agreeing on the other end of things.
well, I haven't figured it all out anyhow with the social distancing. When we were in the State House the other day, we finally got into our seats in groups of 3. Well, then it was okay that we were all in there once we walked in separately and took our oaths separately. What would have been wrong with all of us going in as we went in anyways, but in a row, and all of us taking the oath at the same time? We were all there, and
It had to do, it was visitors, I think, watching. They couldn't have us and all the people that wanted to have visitors for their first swearing in or whatever. I think I was wondering the same thing. That's my understanding, but
Well, and what I find interesting is there was amendment in the House on the bill yesterday too, that required mailing, but they could move the date if they needed to make it work. And the Secretary of State in the House shot it down, saying, well, town clerks couldn't mail out their own. It just is very interesting to me.
What about did you guys in finance talk about the 9% or 9% tax thing from the tax department?
Yeah.
That caused us a great deal of grief.
Every year, it seems to be very little relationship between the December letter and what actually happens. We should revisit it. We talked about it just in very high level. What everyone keeps saying is the revenue projections are up. Sales tax in particular is impressive. So we'll get actual numbers, I think, late next week. So everyone just chill out for now. It's not going to be enough.
I don't think they're going to be up to $180 million, though, Chris.
Oh, hell.
No. It in the ed fund, it was 60 million by the end. It had come down even by the time we were out of here. And then there's federal money direct to schools. I don't know. I couldn't pretend to tell you what it is, but I do know that panic is probably, premature. I think we'll get somewhere a little more comfortable.
Yeah. I think it's next week we're supposed to get a good briefing on those finances, but yesterday in my other committee, we had Klein in there, and he said that, there's a lot of new money coming, plus businesses that are still operating, the sales and use tax and rooms and meal, all those things are way up, and I don't think we'll see a big increase. What else we got in there? You got government ops, finance, approach. Where are you in government ops, Anthony, or did you move?
No, I'm still GovOps. One thing that kind of came up a little bit, it's got mentioned, and I don't know whether Chris knows more about this or anybody does, but this talk about reform, making changes to the marijuana bill around the disadvantaged folks, the minority folks that want to see changes made in the bill. And there was some talk about whether some of those changes would come to this, or proposals would come to this committee, or maybe go to GovOps, since it's already a law now. We're just talking about make some changes to it. I don't know whether anybody has any thoughts about that, where that might be going.
My understanding is that GovOps, from Jeanette, is that GovOps will talk about remember we required the towns affirmatively vote to have retail outlets. That's causing some confusion. I can tell you it's causing confusion here in Burlington. So I at least we're talking about that, and then there are so Senator White had indicated that you all will be talking about that, and then there are other issues that will surface. I don't know how or what intensity. I mean, there are folks. It's amazing to me. There are people that oppose the bill right along that now want us to change it. There are. I think, as we all probably agree, we'd like it to be more regulated, just like it's a crop, because it is farming, but that's not terribly realistic, I don't think. So I don't know, Anthony, what will come of it. I do expect there will be conversations in a broad range of committees about making tweaks.
But won't some people talk about the fact that they want to make it considered an agricultural crop? Therefore, it should come before the Agriculture Committee. That's why I just bring it up. I haven't followed the arguments that closely, to be perfectly honest, but I think it might, some people might think it should come here.
Sure, but people get, and I agree, and we push to have current use as a piece of it. You wouldn't be disqualified from current use, but there is a lot of opposition in House Ways and Means to the idea that if you just consider it ag, then all the benefits and the lack of oversight goes along with it. And suddenly, I have an indoor grow in the middle of downtown Milton, and that's an agricultural space. There are,
Right, sure.
it's tricky. It is
Yeah.
definitely tricky. I mean, to me, if it's outdoor, it ought to be considered ag and leave it there. But folks are rightly, I think, not eager to have a tax incentive for that. I don't know.
And I don't know, the ag agency or the governor, somebody that came up this morning with Anson. But there's a panel or a board that meets and hires, they set up the procedures and then they hire the executive director to run it or something. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the ag agency or the governor, but they have, I think, one person that they can appoint to add to this board. And they've had 82 applicants.
You're talking about the Cannabis Control Board.
Yes, that's the one.
I have the great pleasure of being on the nominating committee. So we'll vet names that we haven't even met yet, but we're going to meet within the next few weeks and then send them to the governor. The governor appoints them all. I want to say it's just 3 members, but that is been a little slower than it was meant to be, but it's happening.
I think Rogers, John Rogers, he called me. He thought he should be on that board because he knows a lot about it. I said, well, probably if you hadn't known quite so much about it and you spent more time campaigning, you'd be in Montpelier helping. And he kind of laughed. He took it good. But no, that's going to be a big issue.
Just to go back to go back to the Parent Pearson proposal, which I also support, there is going to be a bill in the GovOps committee to require mail-in voting in the future.
Well, we should start with town meeting day. It's literally the unsafest time to do it is right now.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
Oh, man. So I'm frustrated because I brought it up last summer and last fall, and we were told we'd have plenty of time in January to do it. Now we're being told that we don't have enough time to do it.
Well, you have till Friday.
Well, recall the Senate did do it. We authorized this in a different bill and the House wouldn't take it up. So
Right.
we were trying to be ahead of it.
And Corey, don't get me wrong. I would have supported a mandatory one too, but
I still think you should. You have time to get it in your committee. We could do a quick conference committee and tell
You
the
know,
House what we need to do.
it's not going to happen, and the bill won't pass if we put that provision in it. And I'm against making the mail-in ballots permanent. We got a general election that's still 2 years away. We got plenty of time to do that. So
You don't have to do
whatever
that
gets
part.
produced this time,
I think
Huh?
town meeting day. I think this town meeting day, because what's going to happen inevitably is I think you're going to have a few communities that are going to hold out to like May, thinking they could do an in-person vote and have their town meeting that way. And so, we're not going. What does that do for us for school budgets? What does that do for,
right?
tax rates? A couple years ago, I was supportive of the governor pushing town meeting day to May, and we were told that was impossible to do in a year. Yet here we are doing it. Effectively, are allowing select boards to choose when they want.
You make good points.
Different
Any-
to let them choose to go to May than to say, oh, it's the end of January, you're going to May. I do think there's a distinction. But I also, Senator Collmore, this idea that bills won't pass it, we saw this in finance last year, that the House, it's hard for the House to meet. And so you just have to, Senate, you just have to accept our language.
Yeah.
It's pretty overblown, I think. And in week 2 here, I think we should be ready to stand up for the Senate position and
Yeah.
not be bullied by some technological issue the House may or may not be having. But
Well, in this case, I'll defend the way it was put together because it had Senate input into the bill as well as House, as well as the administration. And the problem is with our March 2nd deadline, in order to get ballots it needs to get passed this week or it can't happen for a lot of the provisions. So I understand what you're saying, but I think this one's different because of the deadlines involved.
So let's come back Saturday to get it done right.
I'd just say that my recount was going to throw off the entire ability for the state to have mail-in ballots, according to some folks, when we were in the middle of that.
Really?
And the recount went 10 days longer than anyone thought, and magic, I agree. We have to be sensitive. These deadlines are real. Secretary of State gets antsy about it, and they should. That's their job. It's our job to pass good policy.
Yeah, I hope next trip around you campaign harder so we won't have to do that.
Well, if you wouldn't take so much of my time, Mr. Chair, I'd be glad to.
Hell, I didn't even have a clue how my election was going, whether I was win, lose, or draw with 3 Democrats running in a Republican stronghold against 2 Republicans.
Well, Randy and I were the Republicans and Democrats this year, so we had a.
Well, why the hell didn't you shave then and look more upright? And if you're a Democrat, you got to clean your act up.
I was going for the progressive vote with the beard, but I just missed it.
Anything else to come up, guys?
Also,
If not, we'll adjourn until tomorrow, and I'll hook up with Linda and get all this stuff kind of sorted out if we can.
Linda wants us to stay on for some scheduling things after we end the feed.
Oh, you got a note?
I think we all did, right, Linda?
yeah, I was in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I think we'll switch and do that then.